Hello, algebra students. Welcome to chapter 4. In front of you, you have some notes that probably don't start with this page. It shouldn't. Yours starts with 4-1, and 4-1 is a section you should be able to do on your own quickly. So I'm going to ask that you do that paper, the first page front and back, quickly on your own. You might want to hit pause and go through that, see if you can figure out those answers, and I'll post the answers later on the website. And I didn't want to spend the whole video on that because it's going to take me some time to get through 4-2, which I want to start here with you. So if you would go here if you're still watching the video, and let's dive right into things as we talk about patterns and functions, okay? And there's some vocabulary here that's going to be kind of new to you. It's not really hard, but it's a little bit strange at first there. So, whoops. Let's get going here with our first word, function, right there. So you might want to highlight or underline that word, whichever you prefer. And a function is a relationship that pairs each input, okay, I'm going to circle that part right there, that's important, each input value with exactly one output. Exactly one output value. All right, cross out the relationship below that does not show a function. All right, so what we have here is we have equations in the form of two variables where the input is the variable x and the output is the variable y. So this says that each input value has exactly 1. So that means that this value of 1, that output is 2. Okay, if I input the number 3, its output is 4. Input -2, its output is -1. Input -5 is 4. That is, yes, that is a function. Okay, because what we're trying to do is be able to identify what a function is and what a function is not. All right, now take a look at number 2, or the second one here in the middle. If I input a 1, look what happens. It output a 1, and it also output a -1. So right there, where I see two values being output from one input, that is not a function right there. Okay, so this is the one I would cross out. Let's take a look at the last one here to make sure you understand the difference. Notice on this one, if I input -1, it outputs a 1. And I input a -2 and it outputs a 2. If I input a 1, it also output -1, but that's okay. Because you can have an input that, two different inputs that put the same output, but you cannot have, like on this one, you can't have one input that inputs two different ones from itself. Okay, now the visual here I think is really good. See how this 2 puts this? So this is a function, yes. Even though the number 2, output 2, and -2 output the same thing, that's okay. What you cannot do is have, again, one value that outputs two different numbers there. So the visual hopefully helps you explain it. One way that we can look at a function is a machine like this, okay? X is the input, okay? X is a number that goes into an equation. Maybe it's something like y equals 2x plus 1. All right, if I input a value into here, like 1, it outputs a number. And it's only going to output that number every time you put in whatever number you put in. So it goes in the machine, something happens to it, like y is equal to 2x plus 1, and then it outputs y. Okay, so input, output is a way to think of what a function is. I have a nice little visual here for you, if I can find it. Here, take a look at this. This is an online machine. This is a function machine, and it says drag each number into the function machine and look for a pattern. So it's like, I'm going to take this number 1 right here, okay? I'm going to put it into the function machine. Now watch, the machine's going to start. There it goes. It's going, it's running, and it outputs a 1. Cool. All right, let's input 2. Now this is x. I'm putting in x. I put x into the machine. It outputs a 4. Interesting. Let's take this, a 3, and we input a 3, and it outputs a 9. And let's input a 4 and see what it outputs. It outputs 16. So that is a function. Now we can figure out what's the equation happening? What are they doing to x, the input, to get y? And I think I know what it is, but let's guess. I'm going to guess 25 there because I think it's squaring the value. So that would be 36. I think it's taking whatever the input number is and it's multiplying it by itself every time. And there it is. 7 times 7 is 49. So there we go. And we have it. So that is a function, okay? But what we do is we look at it in terms of x and y, okay? So the vocabulary from this, the first one is independent variable. Really important word here that you should have seen in science class. That's a variable whose value determines the value of another. That's the x, okay? That's the independent variable. That's the number that goes into an equation, all right? So the independent variable is x. That's my dog barking, sorry. X, the independent variable, that's the input. Okay, the dependent variable, y, that's the output. Okay, so picture the machine. You input a value x, it outputs a value y. All right, if we see it on a graph, the independent variable is the x-axis, and the dependent variable depends on what that value of x is based on its value. So let's take a look here and let's answer these questions. It says, write I if the first value is independent of the second. Write D if the first value is dependent. Okay, so here we have the growth of a plant. Okay, that's a variable. And the light the plant receives. Okay, now I skipped over that. They actually used that one up here. It says, when showing the relationship between amount of sunlight and amount of plant, the independent variable is the amount of sunlight. Now, they gave you that answer there, but let's think about that. If we were to graph this and we were to ask ourselves, which one depends on the other? The height of a plant, how tall a plant is, or the amount of sunlight that it receives? Well, the amount of sun is independent. Okay, its height depends on how much sun. So as the sun amount increases, the height of the plant should increase because the plant needs sun to grow. Okay, so the first one here, the plant, that is at, the y value, the growth. So that is the dependent variable. Okay, so the first value here, this is the dependent variable. Well, let's take a look at number 3 here. It says the speed of a swimmer and the depth of a pool. Okay, so you have to wonder, does the speed of the swimmer have anything to do, is it at all affected by how deep the pool is? Okay, is it affected at all by how deep a pool is? Okay, it probably shouldn't be, all right, assuming it's not so shallow that they could not swim in it. So the speed of the swimmer is independent of the depth of the pool. Okay, it's independent. Well, let's look at number 4 here. Okay, and maybe this will help clarify it if you're still confused. This says the number of books on a shelf that a shelf can hold and the length of a shelf. Okay, so if you have a shelf, all right, and let's just say that the book size of the books are the same or something. All right, so would the number of books that you can stack on a bookshelf have something to do with how long it is? Would it depend on it? Would the number of books that you could fit on here depend on how long the shelf is? Of course it would. If it's a longer shelf, you could put more books. So the number of books does depend on how long a particular shelf is. Okay, so hopefully that helps you get through page 1 of your notes. So that's just under 10 minutes. Let's stop this one and pick up on page 2 here with our next video.